You're going into a gunfight with a spoon with Cam Newton as a quarterback in 2020.
This is the Rich Eisen Show.
Dog, what are you talking about?
Live from the Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
Can't believe you hung on for 2 hours to ask me if you think the Seahawks are going to blow the Jets out. Oh, my gosh. The answer is yes.
Touchdown, Seahawks!
Today's guests, host of Peacock's Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio, Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis KELCE, Indianapolis Colts owner Jim IRSAY, and now it's Rich Eisen.
There was a whole host of games yesterday, and Jalen Hurts doing what he did. Are we going to hear that it's his gig the rest of the season, and then that's the end of that? I mean, because it was definitely a much better, not just the result wins, but everything else. Mike?
Yeah, how can it not be his job the rest of the way? Last week, Jason KELCE, the Eagles' longtime center, had some very frank and raw comments about how the failure of the offense is a total team production. The players, the coaches, everyone. That it's not just Carson Wentz. Everybody stinks. So when you change out one position and all of a sudden you have your signature win, you beat the Saints, who had every reason to keep winning because they were holding on to the number 1 seed by a very slender margin, and now they're not. That's impressive. And so whatever it was you did yesterday, you keep doing. I'm stunned that Doug Peterson wouldn't come out and state the obvious. Of course it's Jalen Hurts. How could you go back to Carson Wentz at this point? And the question is, how far can Jalen Hurts take them, and how clear will it become by the end of the season that come 2021, there's no competition, there's no presumption it's going to be Wentz, it's going to be Hurts, and they're going to spend the full offseason trying to build an offense around the guy that has shown he can come in and save a lost season.
And I got Jim IRSAY coming up in hour 2, Mike, and the reason why I bring that up is everybody basically assumes, well, Phillip Rivers is, going to need toe surgery. He's already got his high school coaching gig all set up, that he's going to be done there, and that's a perfect spot to send Carson Wentz. Send him there. Frank Reich might have been the real guru on that sideline for Wentz. Do you think it's as simple to connect those dots, Mike?
Well, I think it is. And here's the reality. Step number 1 for the Eagles, and this is a general rule for any effort by any sports team to trade a player. Step 1, insist you're not trading the player. That's how you get the best possible leverage. Otherwise, maybe you have to pay some of his salary like the Dolphins did to unload Ryan Tannehill onto the Titans. Maybe you've got to send a second-round draft pick like the Texans did to get rid of Brock Osweiler's contract several years ago. So you have to create the impression you're sticking with the guy, you still believe in the guy, you're not going to trade him, and then you hope that someone believes it. I don't think anyone will. Their best hope is to get 2 teams interested, to get the Colts and someone else interested. And the litmus test for me, Rich, is very simple. When Frank Reich, the head coach of the Colts, who was the offensive coordinator of the Eagles in 2017, when Wentz was on track to be the MVP, but for the torn ACL he suffered December 10 of that year, if Reich doesn't want him, that's the ultimate red flag that no one else should. And so we'll see how it plays out, but it makes a ton of sense for Wentz to end up in Indianapolis. If you'd have polled Colts fans back in March and said 1 year, $25 million, who do you want, Rivers or Wentz, it would have been unanimous Wentz. And now, yeah, circumstances have changed, but I think that there's value in this idea that maybe Reich can reset the clock for Wentz. He just needs a fresh start, and maybe if you get out of all of that pressure in Philadelphia, from circumstances, from fans, from everything, maybe he can rediscover himself.
I just have not really seen a quarterback throw off his back foot from his own goal line and find his tight end one-on-one with some poor schnook who's attempting to cover you right around midfield. And I've never seen it before. What is it like to actually play in that, Travis? What is that like?
It's reaping the benefit of working your tail off, man. I think that's everybody on this team really is throughout the week. We just we hack away at the fundamentals and the scheme and trying to figure out a defense's or another team's schemes. And you know what? Just going out there and players making plays, man. That's all I can really say is we got a lot of guys that can make plays downfield and all over the field at that. And you know what? Just that was just one example of it.
And So, do you remind your colleague Tyreek Hill that you have more receiving yards than him? Does that ever come up in a very awkward manner? Or does that happen?
No, it's just awkward that everybody's been talking about that specifically. But I think Tyreek still doesn't get enough credit for the type of wide receiver he is. I mean, obviously, we both benefit off of each other's success, but more so, I mean, he's the big threat, right? I mean, deep balls, he has the most in NFL history, I think, already. I think he passed Randy Moss a couple weeks ago in terms of, like, touchdowns, 40-plus yards deep. And, I mean, he's the deadliest weapon in the National Football League. You saw him take a little jet sweep and get a rushing touchdown yesterday. You just have to account for so many different ways that he can hurt you, that it kind of opens up and frees up guys like myself, Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, and Sammy Watkins, and then the backs are out there doing their thing as well. It's just it's a fun offense to play in.
But there is an eye.
But I still think Tyreek doesn't get the credit he deserves.
I know, but there's still an eye in Travis. Between you and between you and he though, who's got the 99 rating in Madden? Talk to me. Which one? Who does?
Man, I guess Madden gave that to me. Man, you love making me talk about myself.
Come on now, Travis.
It was pretty special.
Come on now.
Getting that though. I mean, going from a 73 to a 99 over the course of 7 years, man, it's definitely cool to have that as an accomplishment. Knowing that I'm still a kid when it comes to this game and being a fan of the game, so playing Madden is always in the repertoire.
Your team is at 9-4 right now, Jim. How do you look at this team compared to other teams that you've seen in this position before? What do you think?
Well, it's really exciting, Rich. I tell you, it's always tough with Monday interviews. When you have them after games, you never know how the game's going to go.
Right.
So you always got to have the stiff upper lip and be ready to come on. But I tell you, this team has been so impressive. Really to go 4-1 in a playoff atmosphere over the last 5 weeks, and it really has been that. I mean, when we beat the Raiders yesterday, they knew what was on the line, as we did. Almost a playoff game right there at what was at stake, and both games with Tennessee were huge battles, and we split, but beating Green Bay and Houston, they knew what was on the line. They had a chance to run the table and jump back into this thing, and they fought so gallantly. And as Maradona said, we had the hand of God come in on at the end at the goal line and knock that ball out somehow and recover it. You don't win many like that, but it's been so exciting, and I think there's so many stories that go around it, but as far as the changes and everything, I think obviously Philip Rivers has been that great leader that you can't say enough about, the professional, the competitor, the selfless player that he is, how the guys rally around him, young and old, and he's just a special guy. And he's meant a lot to us this season.
And he's playing hurt right now. There's no doubt about that. He doesn't like talking about it, but we in the media do. And with his age and injury and already word that he's got a coaching gig waiting for him at the prep level in Alabama, do you think this is Philip's one and only year with the Colts, or are you already talking about maybe looking over the steering wheel at all, Jim?
Well, I'll say this. I mean, there's no guarantee there's going to be any surgery in the off season at this point. It's something that is being evaluated. It's not a definite, but he's such a tough guy. I don't know how you play 6 days after an ACL surgery on your knee, but Philip did, and with the toe, everyone knows how tough that is. For a quarterback, driving the ball and that sort of thing. And really, I could see us, lined up the same way. You never know for sure, but with Phillip and Jacoby as a 1-2 punch, you have to give a lot of credit to Jacoby because he's been such a team player, and he's come in and made some big plays on some special plays in the red zone and short yardage and different things I could see us rolling it one more time that direction. It just depends. I know that Chris Ballard and Frank and I just have to talk at the end of the season, sit down and see where we're at there. But we're really excited the way it's going now, and we're really an ascending team. I don't know if we could have won that Raider game in September. I think we were still trying to figure out who we were and trying to figure out exactly who was going to settle into certain roles for our football team. But when you have athletes like Quentin Nelson popping out at left tackle and Naheem Hines doing the things he does in between gymnastic flips in the end zone,
yes,
and Kenny Moore, who just really all-pro type of play coming from him. So there's just a really lot of great news, including young guys like Pittman and Taylor at running back. And we're just really excited, though, the way we're playing right now. And, 2021 isn't that far away. So we'll see what happens in the offseason.
Yeah, you're referring to Kenny Moore's Odell-like interception right in front of Darren Waller. That was a crucial play in the win for the Colts. I'm sitting there watching your post-game show, and, not many times in my current, state of what I'm doing these days do I sit there and miss doing a highlight. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
Sure.
sit around and sit there and say, man, what a great game. I wish I was doing the highlight. Watching you do the highlight last night made me feel that way. And how, to me, Scott, the way you do it and your show in our world, I'm going to get serious with the TV talk here. In our world where everybody assumes that you've seen, all executives assume you've seen everything already in the palm of your hand because of what's going on Twitter and everything, that there's no use to stroll us down the way something that we just watched happened. I think that's a bunch of crap. And that's why your show is crucial in my mind in many different ways and the way you do it. I was sitting there going, man, I wish I was doing this highlight right now, watching you do it last night.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. And
Fact.
I appreciate it. But having done it as well and as long as you have, that the nobody that loves sports is bummed out to revisit that highlight. Nobody. Like, no one's sitting there at 12 o'clock thinking, well, I just watched this incredible game. You know what I don't want to do? I don't want to hear any more about that. I'm right.
Yeah.
You're sitting there going, holy crap, did that just happen? I want to watch it again. And some highlights are just highlights. But as you know, games like that move you the way sports can move you when they're at their best, you don't have to fake the enthusiasm. You can channel your inner Stuart Scott and just be, moved by the content. And that's what last night's game really was. So and it means a lot to hear you say that because you've done this, for many years, as have I. And so when you're sitting there thinking this would be a fun highlight to do, I'll tell you, you're right. That was a fun highlight to do.
I mean, so much going on in that game with just the way it started, the way it went back and forth, the way it ended. So before I let you go into the day, I mean, it sure looks like Lamar's back, like the Lamar that can go vertical, the Lamar he slinged it around when he got it back after Baker Mayfield took the lead, again, or to tie the game again, and he was running. He got 100 yards rushing. I mean, the MVP of 2019, I think for the first time all year, showed up last night, and the Browns are now officially, you could say, not the Browns of old. So, what to make of the aftermath here.
I agree with both those things. The Ravens, and I asked Louis Riddick and Brian Griese about it. I mean, and there's a bit of cliche in the idea of competitive spirit and the idea of what being a pro looks like. But I think the Ravens demonstrated both those things, right? You got to have this game, and they figured out a way to win that game. And you look at their schedule, and it feels favorable. The problem for the Ravens, in my opinion, is just that the AFC is so crowded that there are more good teams than there are spots available for those good teams. So that becomes the challenge for the Ravens, most notably. But for Cleveland, and Louis Riddick, who played for them and has a connection to the city, said, and I agree, that what happened last night, like, this isn't about years ago and Ernest Biner fumbling and years of quarterbacks that weren't good or whatever. But none of that has anything to do with last night. They played a hell of a football game and they lost. But they played the kind of a game, and Baker Mayfield played the kind of a game where if you were going to face them in the playoffs, you would think this is not going to be a whole lot of fun, because they were capable of answering every time they had to answer. So I think what you saw were two excellent football teams that played the game of the year, and it felt every bit like a playoff game. And it ended with people pitching it all over the field, and a bonus 2 points at the end that gave us a fun little segue to our goofy little show.
Scott,
so, wins all around.
Joe, you played 10,363 snaps in a row, so you didn't come out. All that said, you've been around the game quite a bit. Your assessment of Lamar Jackson's fourth quarter disappearance last night, IV or something else? What do you got for me?
Maybe something else. I got to say something else, because I've been on the sideline many times when guys were cramping, guys were getting dehydrated, and the trainer just pulls up with the doctor and sticks an IV needle in your arm and squeezes a bag into you, and then you're good to go. So maybe the protocols have changed in the last 3 years since I've been out of the league, but as far as I know, if you've got the reigning MVP at quarterback, and he proved last night why he's the reigning MVP with so many plays that things broke down, he scrambles, and he gets the first down. Like, you just don't get that many places in the NFL. If that's your guy, I'm giving him an IV on the sideline in between plays.
Yeah,
I mean, if he has to come out and the defense is on the field, throw the IV in the arm, and then maybe you don't finish it on this drive, but you finish it the next drive. There's only one thing that I can think of that would take you to the locker room for about a 5 to 7 minute stretch. Depending on the literature that he has to read in there.
Just about to say. So you gave me a range there. It did seem longer than 5 to 7 actual minutes. I know it may have taken time to get there, but he definitely moved fast. We saw that. The body language and his teammates have since given credence to the non-IV excuse. RG3 tweeted out. Did you see the meme? Did you see the meme that he tweeted out, Joe?
I didn't.
He tweeted out he tweeted out DK Metcalf running down Buda Baker. Buda was Brown's lead, and then the words over DK Metcalf was Lamar after poopin'. That was the with no fewer than 7 crying emojis above that photograph. Marlon Humphrey has since tweeted out his teammate Chris. Can you give us an update on Marlon Humphrey's poll question that he put out there?
Yeah. So Joe, Marlon Humphrey tweeted out, "Did Lamar wash his hands after his Paul Pierce stunt last night?" We're up to 17,000 votes. 60% say no.
How do you read the?
Well, that was always my fear.
Well, because you're
that was
alive.
always my fear when I was playing, because my hands were taped up like Ninja Turtles. I mean, it took me about 10 minutes just to tape my hands, because I would put my tape on my wrist, then I would put my gloves on, and then I had a thumb cast, and then I would tape everything to my wrist. And so if nature called, once that hand tape went on, there was no getting it off and like doing your duty and then washing your hands. Like, you were fully committed to either not using the restroom until the game was over or going without washing your hands, and not a good outcome either way. So you wanted to make sure that you got taking care of that duty before you got all taped up. And,
if you will.
It's a good question. I don't know if we'll ever know.
So when you're balling out right now, what do you think of those old days? I mean, what if you told that kid that needed to go somewhere else for a pro day and watch draft day go without him, and getting a call from the Chargers 7th round and all of that? What do you think of?
I don't think I've told that kid anything, but I think that kid keeps telling me stuff.
What is that?
My current day, and that's just to continue to work and continue to be efficient. That's kind of that's what my mindset's been since day one is, okay, how can I be efficient with the opportunities that I have? Because in the very beginning of my career, my opportunities were like 4 plays of practice, and a couple of those plays would be on scout teams. And so it was very, very limited, but I wanted to make sure I studied as much as I could, and I knew my entire job. I knew what I had to do, so when I go out there, I could play 100%. And, I started to gain traction because I remember a specific instance when I was running down on scout team punt. We're giving our punt return team a look, and I was running as fast as I could, and it was 100%. We were going full speed, and nobody could block me. I made my mind out. Nobody could block me. And it came back to film, and Coach Lynn, our head coach, walks in the room, and he asked our special teams coach, and he's like, hey, who's that number 3? Because at the time I wore number 3, which you can't even wear as a running back, so it was basically a long shot from the beginning. So who's number 3? And Coach Stu, our special teams coach, goes, yeah, that's Austin Ekeler, man. He's been giving us great looks out there. And, so I started to see some, confirmation, hey, I'm being noticed. And I kept building on that until I finally just forced my way into the organization.
And now you're the lead back there when healthy. What was that like for you this year? That, again, Melvin Gordon, as we know, was holding out last year, and you stepped in, and you definitely made more of a name for yourself, and this was going to be your year to be the man, and then your hamstring damn near rips off the bone, right? Was it that bad for you, Austin?
Yeah, going into week 4, I was having pretty good outings. Like I said, being efficient coming into the year. I was averaging 130, 40 yards a game. So, I was out here playing well. We were so strong. That's a different story. But, yeah, week 4, I injured my hamstring, and I had torn, the muscle on my hamstring and then torn the tendon off the bone a little bit. So pretty significant injury. It was a higher hamstring. Usually get, a lower hamstring injury, but mine was really high because I was just in an awkward position when it happened. And, yeah, that basically took me out for 2 months. And, in the NFL, there's not really a lot of time to be sitting out. So I missed a lot of games, I think 6 or 7. And definitely, the team's been struggling, so it doesn't help when, we've had some other guys that's injured as well. But finally made it back. I've gotten a couple games under my belt, and now I'm feeling more so like myself. So looking forward to being out in these last 3 games, taking it one at a time, though, with the Raiders coming up on Thursday.
You mentioned, again, science fiction and action. Action like taking a 747 and driving it into a building. Did you really do that? That actually happened,
we did.
Christopher?
We really did it. I'd scripted this sequence for this plane crash, and we looked at doing it with, miniatures and CG and set builds and everything. And when you added up all those numbers, it occurred to us that it might actually be cheaper to buy a real plane. Originally, we had our eye on a 737, something like that.
Yes.
And we went out to the the airplane graveyard, or where we could buy an old 737. And while we were looking at the 737s, I started looking across the field. You could see these MD-11s and 747s. And I sort of thought, and I said to the line producer, well, hang on a second, why can't we get one of those big ones? And let's if we're going to do it. I actually had the unique experience of impulse buying a 747 and then getting to crash it.
Okay. I have a few questions, if you don't mind me pulling on those strands here. I'll be honest with you. When I was watching this film, I didn't think while watching that scene that this was done for economic reasons, that it would be cheaper to do it the way you were doing it. That didn't. How does one impulse purchase a 747? Christopher,
well,
how does one do that?
You buy it from the salvage company, who then offers to buy it back from you, the bits that you don't destroy. And the key thing is you sell the engines. You take the engines off first, because that's the expensive part that they reuse. So we took the engines off, built our own engines, much cheaper engines, obviously, fake engines, just a little electric motor to turn the fan blade. And that way, you're not doing any of the CG. You're also not building the interior set, which for an airplane is very expensive to build, and you're not building and shooting a miniature, which would be millions of dollars right there to do it well. So in a weird way, yeah, it was kind of a wash. But you can only do that if you've got a team of people working for you who can figure out how to do this. And so, interesting point. I'm sure you've seen The Dark Knight.
Of course.
There's a scene in The Dark Knight where an 18-wheeler truck flips over onto its back.
Yes.
The guy driving that truck is a great stunt guy called Jim Wilkie. He's been around a long time. He's the same guy driving our 747 in Tenet. And so it's literally a thing of saying, Jim, can you drive a 747? Can you figure out how to do that? And, you have a team like that, people that you've worked with for years, you can do these things.
And here I thought Michael Caine was the most valuable member of your team, Christopher.
Well, there's in front of the camera and then there's behind the
yes,
camera.
Understood.
There's a lot of people involved.
Yes, there's a lot of people. Christopher Nolan here on the Rich Eisen Show. That's the question I wanted to ask you, not to put you too much on the spot here, but growing up in London, if I had told you that you could make a movie where you could bash 747s into buildings and also car chases that exhilarate, or make several films.
Bashing things up and blowing things up is a hell of a thrill.
Yes.
But the longer I do this job, the more, working with somebody like Michael, who, for a British kid growing up, I mean, absolute legend. And to have had the times that I've got to have with Sir Michael, I wouldn't trade those for anything.
What was Brady like back then, and what are your conversations with him like now when you're doing your job and you're sitting down with Brady and it's a Monday night game right before the Giants and he's in the middle of an important season for him? What's it like when you sit down with a guy who you knew back in the day as Tommy coming into the program?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, Rich. By the way, he's still Tommy. He'll always be Tommy. But talking with him, we did 2 of their games this year. We did their game against the Giants, and that was the first game I had announced of Tommy's in 20 years, right? Because I've been, playing and then doing college ball, and so I talked to them offline. I'm like, dude, I never would have imagined. Could you have ever imagined that we would be where we are, doing what we're doing now? And I'm so fortunate and lucky to be on Monday Night Football and doing that. And he said, you know what, we're so blessed and so fortunate and so lucky. And I just told him I was proud of him, for everything that he's done and accomplished in his career, and how much I look forward to having the opportunity to call one of his games. And I said, you had to play, damn near 25 years for me to get a chance to call one of your games, but it was all good, and it was a great experience, and for our relationship to come as far as it has, and for me to have that opportunity was great.
So is he comfortable yet, even now, in this offense, Brian, with 3 weeks to go? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think, Rich, that we've watched and grown accustomed to Tom, being who he is in New England, and comfortable and on top of everything. And I think, and he would tell you that it's been a process in Tampa, and new pieces, new players, obviously, the same hurdles that everybody's had to go through, but and a new coach who has a different way of attacking offensively. And so, no, I wouldn't say that he's 100% comfortable, and I wouldn't imagine that he would be in his first year down there.
So how do you think the Bucs season plays out? Final 3 games, they're 8-5. Again, they come out of the bye, and it still didn't look super. It still didn't look like we're used to seeing Brady getting ramped up in December for a long run. It looked still a bit ragtag. How do you think it does play out for Brady in his first season outside of New England, Brian Griese?
Well, I mean, everybody looks at the last 3 games, and 2 of them against Atlanta, and says, "Oh, well." And then the other one, I think, is Detroit, and they're going to go 3-0 to end the season. But Atlanta's a good football team, and can certainly play with Tampa. But I would expect that Bruce Arians and Tom get on the same page and run the football. And I think there's no questioning that it has to be a balanced attack on the offensive side for them to have any success in the postseason. And that's going to be easier said than done because they've tried to do it in the past, and Ronald Jones certainly, Fournette. But I don't think there's any question, much like we're seeing. And I'm not equating Ben Roethlisberger with Tom Brady, but when you put everything on the quarterback in the passing game, and especially at that age, it's not a great recipe. And Ben Roethlisberger's finding this out in a way that's difficult and is ugly. And Tom understands the balance that's needed for him to really execute off of play action, which is what they need to do rather than just dropping back. They've got to have that run game.
I agree with you. However, I am mandated to have to hold your feet to the fire by saying if the Ravens make it, who doesn't? Because they're right now in the category that, sadly, we're still the only organization that's calling the in the hunt category sniffing it. So right now they're sniffing it. Which team that's currently in as a wild card doesn't make it because the Ravens do? Dolphins or Colts? Which one do you choose there? Or even the Titans if they fall out of it?
The Dolphins had a bad night with the Ravens winning, a very bad night. It's tricky, Rich, because I really believe in Flores, and I'm having a very difficult time saying, you know what? I'm going to ride Phil Rivers. I think he can make it. It's just he's let me down many times before.
Right.
And it's always volatile. He's the perfectly named person. He is like a turgid, roaring river, up and down, up and down. So I have to choose between one of them in this conversation, and I guess I'm going to choose – I think I'm going to have to choose the Colts and just roll the dice with Phillip Rivers because they run and they hit and – look, they got to score to settle in their own division because Tennessee smacked them around for a while, but I still think if I have to choose one, it's going to be the Colts. Miami had a bad night with that Ravens win.
So the Colts make it. You think the Dolphins will be the ones that are on the outside looking in because, you know, you're assuming that they do find the Joe Judge Giants in more of pumpkin mode than carriage mode in Week 16 Baltimore, which is sandwiched in between Jacksonville this week and at Cincinnati to wrap it up. Miami has got New England, Vegas, and Buffalo, and they're at Vegas and at Buffalo. So if, you know, the Ravens do win out, that would mean that Miami loses just one, and they'd be out. That's probably where you'd have to sit right now entering
it's so
Week
fun,
15.
right? And you've got so many plates in the air, Rich, and you're just nailing them, and it's so difficult. But I think the takeaway when you put it like that is that if you're one of these teams that needs Baltimore to lose, let's even include the Raiders in that. They need Baltimore to lose badly.
Yeah.
Who you're rooting for the next 3 weeks? You're rooting for Gardner Minshew, maybe Ryan Finley if he plays, and then maybe Daniel Jones. But I hear as I'm waiting on hold to come in, he's got another injury. Like that is not the 27 Yankees of quarterbacks that you want to come in and win the game for you. It's tough.
You said that if Giannis doesn't sign for the Supermax, the NBA might as well just remove that whole construct from the collective bargaining agreement, that it was created exactly for a player like this in a franchise like Milwaukee. He is now signed. So I'm assuming two things that I'd love to give you the floor on. One, the NBA is breathing a sigh of relief. And two, there are a bunch of teams that were hoping for Giannis to leave that are now on to plan B's long term. I'll give you the floor on who those teams are and what the NBA is thinking right now.
You know, I know that this sounds sort of like a little bit of a crazy statement, but Giannis signed that contract yesterday. You could make the case it's the biggest moment in the Bucks franchise since 1974 when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had beef Wellington and then looked up at Wayne Embry, the general manager, and said, "Hey, I want you to trade me." He had won a title there. He had just lost Game 7 of the finals and was the reigning MVP. They traded him to the Lakers some months later. The Bucks have not been back to the finals since. And for a small market team with an NBA superstar, there's no more fragile relationship. Giannis leaving the Milwaukee Bucks potentially sets them back a decade or more, 2 decades or 4 decades. You just don't get players like this. And so for Giannis to make this commitment to give them a gift, and one of the reasons it's a gift is not just because he's staying with them, but, Rich, he could have signed this exact same contract next summer. By doing it now and giving up his options in free agency, he removes an incredible amount of stress that was going to be on the Bucks this season. And it does give the Bucks the best chance to be successful this year. But he gave away something to it. He gave away his optionality. This is just not something we see in the modern NBA. We just haven't seen players do this. The Supermax has worked in a couple of occasions, specifically for Damian Lillard. That captured him in Portland. He stayed. It did not work for Kawhi Leonard. It did not work for Anthony Davis. And so had this been the third one in a row where it didn't work, I do think it was going to be in peril. Now, if you watch the way teams operated in the offseason, you could definitely clearly see teams hedging. The Dallas Mavericks made moves to make sure that they could have cap space to sign Giannis. The Miami Heat signed a bunch of players to 1-year contracts so that they could open up space. The Toronto Raptors gave this contract to Fred VanVleet that looked like a valley and mountain. It started off high, and the next year dips down to allow for more cap space to sign Giannis and then goes back up. The New York Knicks didn't spend their money to make sure that they had a spot open for him. So now those teams do have to move on. It was kind of like a poker game. They had all sort of put their chips in the center, the ante. Now they're going to have to look at their other options. And like I said, maybe it includes James Harden. Maybe they wait and see what happens with Bradley Beal, who is sort of the next star player teams are keeping an eye on. Maybe you go down and look farther down the list, but certainly Giannis committing was not seen as good news for a lot of teams, especially in those types of markets in the last 24 hours.
How has Russell helped you with your development, personally, professionally, DK Metcalf? How has he helped?
He's mainly helped me, on and off the field. In my mind, him, Tyler, Demo, Dwayne Brown, Bobby. I kind of stick to them and take heed to everything that they say and try to mimic all of their off the field steps with recovery and talking about football and life and goals that we have. But my best conversations are on Thursdays before practice, talking to Bobby. Mainly about life, football, goals. The All-Pro seasons that he's had. The teams that won the Super Bowl and that went back-to-back. So it was just like the conversations with Bobby before practice are always the best.
So Bobby isn't Bobby Wagner, who is another person I adore. I just love his game, and I love what he's all about. That's a self-made man right there in Bobby Wagner. Can you just let me in a little bit on that conversation? Let all the 12s who are probably dying to be a fly on the wall of that conversation. What exactly are you going back and forth? How are you chopping it up with Bobby Wagner, DK Metcalf?
It was one Thursday we were looking out on the field, and he saw numbers like 29. Earl Thomas with that number. 31. Cam Chancellor with that number, and they're not retired yet, and they're great players. And Bobby told me, he was like, when I take this jersey off, nobody else is going to wear it. So that's another goal that I had to, put on my wall, put on my goal board as when I leave the Seattle Seahawks, number 14 is going to be retired. And, I go to practice, go to meetings, go into every game knowing that, all right, I got to retire this jersey by the time that I leave. So just the goals that we have in life and on the football field.
So is there an actual goals board of DK Metcalf somewhere, like an actual tangible board, or is this just something for mentally you're doing? Is there an actual board, DK?
Oh, no, I got a goals board in my house.
What does it look like? Is it like a grease board? What is it? What does the goals board in your house look like?
It's a regular whiteboard that I wrote a couple of 2020 goals on, life goals, football goals, team goals, some that I can hold myself accountable for.
How much is on there? Do you want and what can you share that's on that board?
I can share I haven't had 1,000 yards since high school, so this year is the first time that I've had 1,000 yards.
Let's check that box.
I asked for 10 touchdowns.
Check
I wrote that on the board, and I got it.
Okay, check that.
I said that we got to make it to the NFC Championship this year. Last year we were a game short.
Okay.
So that's on there. Ready to check that one off. Winning the Super Bowl, playing 10 years in the league at least. Taking down some more receiver records that's standing in the NFL.
Would you break up the heat if you're Pat Riley? Would you break it up and tell Coach Spo, we're bringing in Harden and it's COVID time, but let's get as much practice as we can, get him in shape as much as we can, and let's figure this thing out. And names like Hero or Adebayo, Dragic might be gone. I mean, would you do that?
Again, like when you look at cores, right, I would say the Brooklyn Nets have the best core of guys after their two superstars. Then I think you would go to Miami. When you're talking about Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, and when you're talking about those guys, that just it hurts. It hurts to let go of those athletes.
Of course.
It does. Like even just as a fan, right, and how, like, popular they are. Now, James Harden is going to do what he does. If you can get a commitment from James, like if you bring him in and he's willing to sign an extension, one thing you know about Miami is they don't play. It don't matter if it's LeBron James, D-Wade, Jimmy Butler, you're going to get in shape, and Pat Riley doesn't play games. So if you're going to get an extension, you're going to eventually get the best version of James Harden, and it could take a couple of months. But, yes, I would, but that would be hard. I would try and give up as many picks versus like a Tyler Hero or a Bam Adebayo.
And then keep an eye on South Beach? I'm serious. You know what I mean? Like, there's no concern about that?
No, I think there's still going to be a level of professionalism that it's going to take.
Right.
I think James Harden has a window, and this is real. I think he's got 3 more years as a top 5 player, and then I think he's got 2 more years after that as a top 10, top 12 player. Right, like that's just my humble opinion. But I don't think you worry about the extracurriculars because like you've watched enough basketball, you've seen enough. Pat Riley doesn't care that it's in Miami. Miami is just a tool to help recruit players. Once you're there, you're in a boot camp. You're in a boot camp. That's the way it is. They're checking body fats, every week, similar to what they do in San Antonio. They're not playing. There's never been any player that's gone to Miami and said, like, oh, I just partied the whole time, and that's why I wasn't successful.
Wow. You just gave me a great idea here, Richard, and I feel for the guys that are working here. Guys, what do you think? We should institute a body fat check here, right?
100% of body mass index check.
I mean,
that's a horrible idea.
They're already having a rough week because they're already having a terrible week because I picked up a few notes on how to talk to the crew from Tom Cruise. And now this is a rough week for everybody here.
That's a terrible idea.
That's the thing, and that's the weird thing. Imagine the combination. The combination is top. He checks your body fats and talks to you like you're Tom Cruise, That's a rough combo. And you're not even in Miami. You're in San Antonio. Didn't talk to you like that.
That's Mission Impossible.
What? Are you kidding me? That's a sequel nobody wants to watch.
Yeah, that's MI0. Like, you don't want any part of that.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was definitely the villain. Villains don't make the sequel. Right? I didn't make the sequel in San Antonio.
We had Dabo on the show 2 weeks ago, and I asked him point blank, do you think, because of the stakes that this game clearly has, that the loser of this game might be on the outside looking in, looking at a team that has played half of the number of games that either one of these have played, getting in, and they're out. Asking that of Dabo, essentially, is Ohio State, the Ohio State, worth it?
You threw him a giant piece of red meat, and I'm sure he bit on it.
He sure did. He spit it out and swallowed the bones, too. And I asked Brian Kelly the same question when I had him on 2 days before, and these guys are like, we've gone through a whole season in COVID, and these kids have played it all, and they've spilled their hearts out, and that nobody that's played half a schedule as we have deserves to be in. Essentially, is what I'm wrapping it up. What do you think of this subject going into this game? Because I'm sure you and Kirk will be talking about it.
I think their feelings are genuine. I do think that part of it also, nobody really wants to see Ohio State in there. If you have a choice to have another team, you might choose that because we know that they're good enough to win it if they get in it. But should they be? That's a very fair question. I would tend to be in line with Dabo and Brian Kelly's opinion. And I know how challenging it's been week to week. I know with the mental wear and tear beyond the physical stuff these teams have gone through. When you play double the schedule, basically, you've had double the duress. And Ohio State to arrive, not that they haven't had stress when they miss games. Don't get me wrong. It's stressful to sit games out and they're going through practice and all that. But still, when you have to lay it out there on the field, and this is game 6 for them, and I think the rumors that are swirling, by the way, that they are going to face Northwestern likely down a top-line receiver or 2. We don't know for sure. They put that off until tomorrow, but there are more COVID issues in the Ohio State program. And if they follow the protocol that's set out by the Big Ten, and the CFP requires you to go back to your conference protocol, they would miss the playoff because the playoff is right up close to these end of the games. And so that's in play too. That's sort of tomorrow's news, but it's already been leaking out for the last 24 to 36 hours. Maybe it's Chris Olave, maybe it's Garrett Wilson. Nobody's saying for sure, and I don't know for sure, but those are the names. Those are important names to have on Ohio State's team. But no, I think that the committee's already kind of weighed in on that, though, haven't they, Rich? And that's why Kelly and Dabo are upset about it, because they're already in the top 4, having played 5 games. And it's not like they face murderer's row. Let's be honest, okay? Indiana was a 7-point win. Team that's proven to be a quality team, but that's pretty much it in terms of the teams that they've handled on their schedule. something to brag about, and that's a factor too. If you played 5 really strong teams, that's different than the schedule they played. So it's a volatile issue. It's not personal. Ohio State fans always think it's personal. They have a very vocal, energized fan base. If you didn't know, I think you know. But so they're going to act like it's a conspiracy. We're being singled out. I mean, it's not that. It's just whatever team was in their position. I think you could feel the same way about it, regardless of who it is.
Chad, it's been too long, wouldn't you say?
You know, it has been very long. It's been very long, and I would like for us to do something about that.
Okay. What would you like to do about that?
In 2021, I need you and I to either work together in some capacity to where we get that relationship again. You and I, we were on a pace to be like the modern-day Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali. Like, we were there.
We were there. We were at the mountaintop. You are correct, Chad. So I have, just announced yesterday with Westwood One Podcasting, a new podcast shingle. Would you like to do one together, Chad?
You know what? I think we need to do that. We need, not just you and I need to do that. We need the men in our relationship, but the world needs to witness and be a part of that journey that you and I once had.
Okay, so we could call it OCHOCINCO and Shekel Zero or something like that. What do we do? I don't know. I don't know what we could. But Chad and Rich, I don't know. We could do something. We got something.
I mean, listen, the ideas are endless.
They are,
and I'm sure we can have people come up with something that would be, that would be the best for both of us, and it'd be pure content gold.
So hold on a second, Chad. Before we get to that, though, I think there is something that that is still outstanding between the two of us. That needs to be addressed before we move forward, even with this interview. Do you recall the 2009 Pro Bowl in South Florida? Do you remember that? We were all in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yeah.
You said at the time on live NFL Network television, there is somewhere in the archives of NFL Network, the receipts, if you will, of you saying that you were going to send me a pair of Debo slippers. You were saying that in 2009. I told you 10.5 was my size, and you said I'm going to send them to you. It's almost 2021, Chad, and I still don't have them. What are we going to do about this?
We can resolve that issue very simply, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you're in LA, right?
I am.
So we're going to go get the Debos together. I'll pick you up. We're going to go to the Slauson Swap Meet. We're going to go to the Slauson Swap Meet and get you a 10.5 pair of Debos. Now, I'm not sure what your favorite color is. They have them in black. They have them in blue. They have them in red.
I'll go blue. Because, I'm a Michigan guy, and I like saying the words go and blue next to each other. I'll go blue.
Okay.
Isn't there a way to, it's not that I want to hang with you, Chad. I would love to.
Right.
Is there a way to ship them somewhere?
I think it'd be better, instead of shipping, we can make this a more formal, have a conversation, have coffee, cigar, talk, catch up. It's been years. And we can talk about the development of a show that you and I can do later on in the future. And I think that an Uber ride would be much better than me shipping.
We could film it. We could turn it into the pilot episode. It's
Chad
content.
is talking about gold. Rich and Chad, in the first ever episode of whatever the hell they're going to do together, go shopping for Debos that Rich has been waiting for 12 years. Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. Chad, I have a 12-year-old son that's almost as old as me, waiting for you to actually give me what you told me you were going to give me. Almost.
I got you. I promise.
What is going on? And you're doing NFL The Grind stuff. I love watching you do this show. You enjoy, do you want to be part of the paparazzi, like full time here, Chad? Like, is this what you want to do? You're co-hosting a show here. You're doing stuff for NFL Films. I see you're part of what's going on with Madden, announcing whose rating is what. I see what you're up to. I keep tabs on you, Chad.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's just something when the camera is rolling. Despite my grandmother always saying I have a face for radio, the fact that I'm able to manipulate the camera, regardless of whatever the content is that I'm filming, is pretty good. And when the camera is rolling, I am gold. I need no script.
Just put it in front of me, give me some talking points, and I'm good to go. And I can just have a whole show by myself with literally nothing.
Training Day, what did you like about that role and how you brought it, and your scenes with Denzel and Ethan Hawke were something else, man. What about that film?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Was, to begin with, I didn't want to. I had worked pretty much, no, not pretty much, absolutely steadily for over 2 years without having any time off. Went from an off-Broadway play to a film in New Zealand that shot for 9 months, to a film that shot for 4 months in Germany. Coming back, stopped off in New York, had lunch with Lasse Hallström that turned out to be a whole day, and he offered me a part in Shipping News. And I had like 3 weeks off before having to start Shipping News. I get home here in Idaho, where I am, and I get an offer from Warner Brothers to do Training Day, and I said, no, I can't do it. So Denzel calls me up and he said, this is the way it works, Scott. I have to have a best friend in this film who's a white guy who I'm going to kill at the end of the film, and the whole audience, including the black audience, has to really be pissed off at me for doing it. He said, that's you. There is nobody else.
What a compliment, Scott.
We had met each other on Courage Under Fire and become friends. And D is absolutely one of the greatest actors alive. So anyway, I said, Denzel, I want to catch, I'm going to hike up in the mountains and work out a little bit and hang out with my wife before I go to work again. And he said, no, you've got to do this. This is the way it's going to work. It's going to say Denzel Washington, Ethan Hawke in Training Day, and then right after that it's going to say, starring Scott Glenn, you only work 5 days, and this is how much money you're going to make. And I said, who made that deal? And Dee said, well, I kind of did. And at the time, they thought that there was going to be a writer's strike, so the studios wanted to get as much inventory as possible. Anyway, at that point, I read the script and essentially saw 2 kind of amazing monologues, the second one of which ended in Denzel blowing me away with a shotgun. And just went and did it. He's so much fun to work with, and Ethan is as well. So, when you're doing that kind of work, it's not quite guilty enough to turn down the paycheck, but it's almost like you're just getting paid to have fun.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.